5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
And welcome back. Or welcome for the first time, everybody. This is Truth, Beer, and Consequences. I am Marco. I'm a brewer in the Cincinnati craft beer industry, and I just want to set you up and let you know whether you're returning listener or a listener for the first time that Truth, Beer, and Consequences is a podcast where we recap the Cincinnati beer podcast with basically our own version of the truth. We hope there aren't too many consequences from the hosts or guests of the other podcasts that we cover when we add in our own little speculations or spin on whatever's going on, during the show or behind the mic. And, I hope you really enjoy it. I would like to introduce the best host of Truth, Beer, and Consequences. It is Julia. Julia, say hi to the people.
Hi, people. I'm Julia. I write funny things about beer on the Facebooks, on the social medias, and I love doing this show with Marco. We're going to poke a little light humor at all the podcasts that we recap and see what you think. Try to drive you to want to know, is that really what they said? Is that really what they covered? And have you listened to them? Don't just take our word for it.
No, but the great thing is that if you don't listen to the other shows and you listen to ours, that's the truth. That's the truth that you know. So love that about the show and always have a good time. So I want to give a big shout out to our podcast hosts. BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery. BC's Bottle Lodge has 2 locations, one in Montgomery and one in Liberty. Here locally in the suburbs of Cincinnati. Please go and support those bottle shops. And thank you for being our gracious podcast hosts.
And this episode is not sponsored by Higher Gravity, which is another local Cincinnati bottle shop. They're currently based out of Northside, but they are opening a second location up in Blue Ash at Summit Park. Were some delays due to COVID, but they're hoping to open the doors there by January. February is kind of the late end of what they're hoping to be their date. They have a beer vent calendar for sale that is amazing, so get online and order that. They have a limited number, so once they're gone, they're gone. And they just started a Stein Club. You can buy in for 2 years now. They have 3 amazing hand-thrown ceramic steins that you can pick from. So go give them some support and drink some beer.
Yeah, that COVID is delayed a lot. What I want to go ahead and say is that if for any reason anyone feels that good content or humor is delayed, it's just COVID. Stick with us, and it should come around soon.
So, Marco.
Julia.
We can't really have a beer podcast without having a beer, can we?
Well, not a good one.
This is very true. So, I notice you have a glass in front of you. I have a glass in front of me. How about you let our listeners know what you're drinking?
I'd love to. So what I'm drinking here at the amazing, fresh-smelling BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery, and thank you to our producer, Brian, who's here on the ones and twos today. I'm drinking Kenny's Day Drinking Lager from 16 Lots out of Mason, Ohio, my son's favorite suburb of Cincinnati, Mason. This is a lager, American-style lager at 4.2% ABV. Those of you in Cincinnati know Ken Anderson and the work that he does with his Ken Anderson Foundation, which is certainly special to me and special to Cincinnati and those that support his quest to help adults with special needs. And I couldn't not get it. And so, you got an easy drinking lager, I'm there. Where there is easy drinking lager, I am there.
And my beer is not quite as easy drinking, but it isn't hard drinking. I have a stout from Maine Brewing Company called Fall, clocking it at 5.6%. Even though it's still in the 80s, just something dark, sweet sounded right up my alley, and it's hitting the spot.
That was my nickname in high school, dark and sweet. What did you listen to last week, Julia?
I listened to a whole bunch of podcasts, quite possibly all the podcasts.
I'm right there with you.
Nice.
I would imagine we probably go, toe-to-toe on how many podcasts we listen to
I feel like
week.
we listen to kind of the same circle of podcasts.
I think so.
Yeah.
And certainly what we're going to cover, we are in it. Like we listen to these, so we're going to just rat-a-tat-tat wrap it off on what we're going to talk about today, and then we're going to, have one of the wonderful folks here at BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery come around, insult us, and then tell us what show should be first.
Sounds perfect. So the podcasts that we'll be covering today are Hustle and Brews with Delgado Cannoli.
Cincy Brewcast, where they talked about the Booze, Beer, and Bonks Festival.
Very close. That is our truth. We're also going to talk about shift beers, where they drink beers that have either terrible, unappealing names or terrible, unappealing artwork.
Sonder Stories, where they cover their Oktoberfest, which was live with a bunch of local brewery folk.
We're going to do a real quick cover of the Craft Parenting podcast, where they talked mostly about German food, but there was a bit of beer talk in there, so we'll do a real quick snippet on that.
And as we promised, those of you who listen and are faithful listeners, thank you to my wife, Rachel, and to my mom.
And to Josh and my mom.
We are going to cover when something comes into our orbit, when something comes into our atmosphere, our circle, we're going to cover a pod. And I was made aware of the podcast that's called That's So Cincy. And 2 weeks ago, they interviewed legend Jim Cook, who's the founder of Boston Beer, that brand name Sam Adams, and all of the many different, just alcohol iterations that they have. And so we're excited to cover that because we love everything Boston Beer. Boston Beer Company, Cincinnati Beer. We love it.
So, Marco, before we have producer Brian insult us and give us the first podcast that we're going to recap, This is a big episode for us.
Yes.
We have hit double digits.
Wow.
Episode 10.
We're getting there. We're almost teenagers.
We are almost teens. So thank you guys for sticking with us for 9 ridiculous episodes so far. It's only going to get better with as we are now getting close to we are preteens in the podcasting world now.
That's right.
It's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, and then we get to the phase where we think we know it all, and then it's
we don't.
No.
Oh.
No. Yes. Maybe.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, and do the stuff, right? Do the things that you do to support the shows that you like, which is follow the show, share the show, leave us positive reviews. Julia, where do they send the negative reviews?
At Raging Hop.
That's right, at Raging Hop on Twitter, and also it's time. I just want to let all of you know it's time. It's time that you go ahead and do what you want to do, which is grab a couple of fresh brews, bring them to BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery. Make sure that you notate that they're for us at Truth Beer Pod, and producer Brian, producer Kenny, producer BC Ben Kilmer. They're going to make sure that we have that ready and fresh to go. Make sure you leave who you are, your address, and your social security number so that we can shout you out on the podcast.
All right, let's get into our first show. Well, I was heartily insulted. How about you?
He thought he insulted me. He's like, "You're short," and I was like, oh, "Hold on a second. I mean, tell me something I don't know.
Yeah,
Be a little
this
creative,
is true.
right?"
This is true.
Whatever, Marco Polo. I'm like, okay, well, that's only the first time I've heard that today. Be better, do better, producer Brian.
Hey, I have a feeling as the show goes on, it'll get better and better, or worse, depending on how you look at it.
It's all right. I can take it.
All right.
Hustle and Brews.
Hustle and Brews, episode 17 with Steve Delgado of Delgado's Cannoli Bar.
That's right. So Hustle and Brews is hosted by Matt Damaris. Matt Damaris, the premise of the show is that he interviews local entrepreneurs. And he himself is an entrepreneur, but he really doesn't like that label. He doesn't really think of himself as an entrepreneur, even though he is. He really thinks of himself as a hustler, baby. And then so he goes and he digs into how they got started, what's their why, do they have any entrepreneurs in their family, and they talk about the business and whatever's going on in Cincy. They usually meet at a local craft brewery of their choosing. And so, Julia, where do they meet up at?
They met up at Third Eye Brewing this time around. They were joined by Chloe, who is their head brewer at Third Eye. Matt enjoyed a Festbier. Steve had Third Eye's House Hooch, and Chloe had their pumpkin pie beer.
Mm-hmm. Third Eye Brewing out there in Sharonville.
Mm-hmm.
Julia, have you been to Third Eye?
I have. I've been there a couple times. Delicious beer, delicious food. It's a great atmosphere. Definitely worth a visit if you haven't been there yet.
I have been there as well several times. Matter of fact, I had been there with my wife. Shout out to my wife who met me there, and we all had a good time. Great place, great space, great beer, great food. It's really cool. Getting into Delgardo's, he was a very passionate. It was really great, high energy, very passionate throughout the show, throughout the episode, which is really fantastic. They went ahead and they started. They go back into his roots where he started in coffee and he did have. And this is important, y'all. I mean, we mess around on Truth Beer Pod and we like digging into the fun and taking turns and all that. But Steve is a cancer survivor.
Yes.
And Steve survived breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve talks about the time where he went and was not just a survivor, but an advocate for awareness, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. And they go into some of his story after that. Julia, do you want to tell a little bit of that?
Really, he was never 100% happy with what he had been doing. I believe his father had always told him, do what you love, don't work just because you want to make money. But he never really followed through with any of his dreams until after overcoming cancer. And that's when he realized life is too short. I'm just going to get out there, put myself out there, do what I want to do, enjoy life the way that I want to enjoy it, and start the business that I have always wanted to start, which ended up being cannolis.
Yes, and although that is a heavy subject, they talk about it, and it is very serious, but he is always very upbeat, and this is not a podcast that drags you down.
No,
it's
not at all. It lifts you up. I mean, it was a very inspiring podcast.
Yes, and so they get into cannolis. Okay, let's get into cannolis. And well, actually, before we do that, on the show, and of course, we're not going to go through every 120 minute of the show, but they do get into the Italian translation of Delgardo, which, if you don't know, it means guardian of the deli.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
It's a very huge honor. It goes back generations. The deli for the Italian family is so important and so integral in that community that they had guardians for the deli.
Mostly the prosciutto, because that is, I guess, the bread and butter, you could say, of the Italian deli.
It tastes like butter. Prosciutto, you have good
right.
prosciutto, it tastes like butter.
Yeah, so his name kind of fits with the whole. He's now the guardian of cannolis, which it's not a deli, it's not a deli food or a deli dessert, but he has made a name for himself and cannolis in the greater Cincinnati area.
Yeah,
his shop's based out of Covington. He has gotten some pretty exciting, I guess, contracts with some local, I'll just say, schools and businesses. I want you to listen to the episode to find out who he has all been able to work with so far. But so far, his crowning achievement is what they focused on with this episode, and that is Third Eye and Delgardo Cannoli Bar are collaborating on a prosciutto beer.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. And they talked about it and the release date. It's coming out. Check out Third Eye's social media pages. Go and follow Delgardo's Cannoli. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of social media stuff.
I have the date of the event.
Oh.
If you would like, I have some information about it.
Oh, yes, love it.
So October the 16th from 12 to 4, you can get the Delgardo Third Eye collaboration called Holy Cannoli. You can get it in cans. It'll be on draft. And a portion of every can sold will support the Karen Wellington Foundation, which helps support breast cancer survivors. He will also have his cannoli food truck there selling cannolis, and $1 from each cannoli sold will also go to the Karen Wellington Foundation. So October the 16th at Third Eye Brewing from 12 to 4. Get up there, get some holy cannoli beer, get some cannolis. He actually has another event later that night that he's taking the cannoli truck to, which is why it's only... Oh, it is his anniversary. That's right. The cannoli bar.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep, that's the cannoli anniversary.
The holy cannoli beer will be a blonde ale. And unfortunately, Marco, will have lactose in it. So I will have to partake for you.
Yeah, and I don't mind that. I trust your palate, and when you say it's good, it's good. You know, I'm okay with it. Mm-hmm. Also, which was really interesting, and I thought this is one of the things where when you're doing what you love and you find other people who are doing what they love, there are people that you follow that you respect. And there was a chef from a very renowned New York establishment that came to Delgardo's, and they traded tastes. And that chef from New York had the highest compliment for his cream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said it was the best cream that he's ever had.
Yeah, I mean that's special when you have one of your, somebody that you look up to compliment your cream. Is there anything better? I mean, in that
they wanted
spectrum,
to trade cream, and I mean that's
in that spectrum. I don't think there's anything better. Really,
no, there really can't. Did you have anything else on Hustle and Brews that you wanted to throw out there before we move on to the next podcast?
No, I just, again, want to reiterate, go support Third Eye, go support Delgardo's, go to the charity event, drink a lot of beer. Also, listen to Matt Damaris's Hustle and Brews. For anybody who needs a little inspiration, his shows, his pods are really fascinating. And he's talking with local people. These are people that are local in our community who are making something out of their pursuits locally. So listen to the show, support the show, and he also has give back aspects to the show. So check that out. Hustle and Brews, excellent episode.
Oh, and shout out to Chloe from Third Eye for getting married. Congratulations. We are back.
Hello, everyone.
We have once again been insulted, and Marco's mother's name was even brought up this time around by producer Brian.
Yeah, so I kicked him in the nuts.
Yeah. We may not get refills on our beers for a while.
And we're paying. He's
good
pouring.
Money. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not. They're not doing us any favors there.
They are allowing us to have this lovely 6-foot table rent free.
Kick him in his nuts again. You know why?
Why?
Okay.
Just because you can.
What happened is, before we ended, Julia went up to Brian and said, if someone kicked you in your nuts, would you be okay with it? And Brian's like, no. And Julia said, well, what if I gave you $100? And he said, well, maybe. And then...
Well, but he wanted the $100 first.
I went up to Julia and said, what if I give you $300? And I tell you, I'm going to kick Brian in the nuts. And in the end, he would be happy about it. And that's how that happened.
Yeah. So it is still to be determined if
so you're $200 up.
I'm $200 up, but I don't know if I'm going to be getting another beer. That's the potential.
But he's a capitalist. What's going to happen is if we're paying, he's going to take the money. Yeah,
that's fair.
Absolutely.
That's fair. Well, let's move on to Cincy Brewcast and all other things known for this week. What say you, Marco?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So Cincy Brewcast this week is talking about the beer festival that the Gnarly Gnome and Cincy by the Pint, along with the Foaling Warehouse, are putting on.
And Cartridge Brewing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're the main beer sponsor for the event.
Really?
Which is called Binks, Bunks, Boinks, Booze and Beer. I think I got that right.
You got 4 B's in there?
Something like that.
And what day is the beer festival?
The beer fest is on November 20th. There are 2 sessions, one from 12 to 4. The other is from 6 to 10. And there will be a Kick the Keg after party from 10 to midnight.
So they get into a little bit.
Who's they? We haven't mentioned his guest, who is an integral part of the festival.
So Cincy by the Pint is a
Yeah.
blog. And
also a person,
And a person.
I think.
Yeah.
We think.
His first name is Cincy, and his last name is
It's
by
Pint.
the Pint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Merrill.
By the pint. Mm-hmm.
Merrill is his name. So you've got the gnome, who his real name slips out from Merrill often in the show.
Or was he talking about someone else who's involved in the festival?
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. I'm not going to be the one to break that news to the world.
I don't know.
I don't know either. So they're going to have around 20 local craft breweries who are going to be providing amazing beer samples. There's going to be foaling available, or as I like to say, fouling, because F-O-W-L, that's foul to me in my head. And as we know on this show, pronunciation is key. So important.
So your ticket, they make clear, it's a very affordable ticket to anybody who goes to craft beer festivals. I mean, a $40 ticket is very reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
You can upgrade for $10 for the Kick the Keg event. There are options to be able to pool together for a table to where you're actually reserving a table rather than having to kick small people away from tables to get a seat.
Mm-hmm.
The foaling is open. So,
Yeah.
and then with everybody's ticket comes two goes, two tries at the mystery beer dispenser. And so at the Foaling Warehouse, typically they have a beer dispenser. I don't know. It's a vending machine. And the vending machine has tiers to it. And it's I don't know I don't know the dollar amounts exactly, like $3.
I think it was
$4,
$2 to
$5.
$6.
Yeah, $2 to $6.
Yeah.
So you just punch the button and you get what you get. And it ranges from great stuff to not so great stuff, but I hear they're going to load the machine for the event.
Yes. And if you think about it, I know that some people are like, oh, $40 for another beer festival. This isn't going to be just another beer festival. You have people that know what they're doing, know what good Cincinnati beer is, curating everything that's going to be at the event. So there is a rumor that Sam Adams Utopias will be present at a booth. Marco and I have already volunteered to be at that booth.
Both sessions.
And
the after
the Kick the Keg. So we're just waiting to hear back from Gnome and Merrill and Sam Adams to kind of confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, 2 out of the 3 have our contact information.
Yes.
So. And the other one has been getting bombarded on social media, so they should have at least a way to contact me.
I don't want to say there wasn't a lot to this episode because it was pretty in-depth about what they're doing, how they set it up, how they went about it. But it is all about a beer fest. So kind of the last thing that I wanted to mention on my end, and then I'll see, what else you mentioned, because I could be forgetting something, is that kind of this is right at Gnome. We are still waiting for our Pod Squad discount codes as part of, the Cincinnati Craft Beer Pod Squad
Right, the discount
all
codes.
of that. So if you can just hit up either Marco or myself with that information at your earliest convenience, that'd be great.
Yep.
Maybe wait until you release the participating breweries and the tap list, or I guess sample lists. I'm not sure exactly how to word that. That'll be there, and looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a phenomenal time.
I think it's going to be a phenomenal time as well. I look forward to, the event. I think it's going to be great. I also think that once the event's over, we're going to have an amazing session where they can look back and how to make it even better for the next year. So it's one of those things where it's great in the moment, and next year is going to be even better. The only other thing I'd say is this event is put on by people who really care and are involved in the Cincinnati craft beer community. I mean, I need to be chased to run. I don't need a reason to drink a beer. Mm-hmm. But if you need a reason to drink a beer, I'm giving you the reason. It's because it's going to be a great beer festival.
Yes.
So go out, be ready to go to the event, get there responsibly, get home responsibly, and get your damn tickets.
And you can get your tickets at thegnarlygnome.com/tickets.
And while you're there, browse the merchandise, pick out some merchandise, and buy some merchandise.
So, in other gnome stuff, because we like to try to wrap up everything that the Gnarly Gnome does, not just his podcast, because everything that he does, his vlog, his YouTube show, Prost, they all tie in very closely together. So let's go over Prost and a very funny vlog that he did this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prost. What do you have on Prost, Julia?
Prost was all about seltzer stuff. So from the guy who is not a fan of seltzer, what do you know? He's drinking a seltzer. Yes.
Or is he?
It was on video, so we did actually see, since Prost is a YouTube video episode, we actually do see that he is drinking seltzer.
So true. He is drinking a seltzer.
Yes.
And it is locally produced.
Very locally produced.
And fruit, it has.
It actually has more fruit in it than most of the fruit juices that you buy at a store.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how when you look at the bottle of fruit juice, you're like, well, hold on a second. Well, what's the rest of this?
5% fruit, 95% water, and high fructose corn syrup is my guess.
Delicious.
Yeah, that corn syrup is so good.
That's delicious.
Yeah, this is a 15% fruit seltzer.
Holy schmoly.
Yeah. I did not write down the ABV of it, but they're good.
But
like
15% fruit in a can. It's 12 ounces, right?
Yeah, it's 12-ounce can.
Holy
yeah.
smokes.
Yeah. This one was, the tart cherry was a bright red, or not bright red, but like a kind of a bright pink color. So it actually looked like cherry, not like a lot of seltzers you get that regardless of the flavor. They're clear or very, very lightly tinted. Urban Artifact has multiple flavors of this. Gnome has said that he has tried them all and has cases of all of them in all of his many, many beer fridges. So he's a fizz head.
Well, he's
I've
also
gotta
a
say that.
slut for Urban Artifact. Really.
He really is.
I mean, and that's not a bad term.
No, that's a good one.
No, he,
Yeah, they make excellent stuff. So including
so
seltzers.
why not be?
Right.
Yeah, it's great.
So something else that the Not a Fizzhead Gnome released this week was a vlog where he went to Over the Rhine. He stopped by Standard Beer, and he had something that it's labeled as a seltzer, but you and I both know it ain't a seltzer. What are we talking about, Marco?
Smooge.
And I even have it written down with like 30 O's, so that was perfect.
God, this smooge.
So I did want to say for the vlog, the cinematography that he had of the Standard Beer like entrance, I loved that. I thought that those were absolutely gorgeous video shots. Look him up at gnomecreative.com if you have any audio, video, or imagery needs.
Yes,
He's
please.
definitely working on doing more and more of that, and he does amazing work.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Smooge, he was like, oh, I finally tracked this down. I was finally able to find it. It's like, dude, this stuff has been in every bottle shop and Kroger and gas station for the last like 2 or 3 weeks. It wasn't that hard. He just wanted an excuse to go to Standard Beer is my guess.
Yeah, that's my guess too. Thanks for the invite, Gnome. Julie and I appreciated it. Sorry we couldn't make it. We were doing
Podcast stuff.
I guess podcast stuff. I
Sure.
don't know. So Smooge. So this is labeled as a seltzer. Yeah. So when you pour it out, it's thick. It's like
She very thick.
it's thick.
It's pretty much like, and I forget it. Maybe it was on Shipped Beers, but it was described somewhere this week as a smoothie cocktail,
Yeah, weird.
which is a much more fitting description than a smoothie seltzer. It is just like pouring a smoothie into a glass, 100%.
Right. It's not like having a thin-bodied, fizzy, faint, fruit-tasting, low-carb drink. This is like taking fruit, mixing it up in your NutriBullet, and dumping chunkiness into your glass.
Yeah. He had the strawberry banana smooge. They also have a pina colada flavor. I've had both. They're both very good. They're just not seltzers.
No, but
No.
people are. Somebody's buying them. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So Gnome did say a phrase that he can't make it happen. No, we do not need smooge myself to be a thing.
No.
So we need to be careful about the words that are coming out of our mouths because our children may repeat them.
Yeah.
Or Marco may repeat them, and then it'll just be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it just doesn't need to be in the lexicon, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I just
right.
smooched myself.
Well, yeah, let's not do that one either.
Yeah, it didn't sound good,
We didn't.
did it?
Not at all.
Didn't sound good. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Yeah, it was a
I
great.
apologize, and I'm not going to apologize.
But he's not. No, he's apologizing for not apologizing. But it was a good vlog. It was a nice, fun little show of Gnome trying something that I don't want to say is out of his wheelhouse because he likes seltzers.
All he's been doing for a
fizz
year
head.
and a half is having seltzers.
Is having seltzers, yeah.
In between the other beers that he's having.
Yes. He did say, as kind of a closing to the vlog, smooge deserves to exist, which I'm not sure if I agree with or not. I'm glad that I got the opportunity to try it, but I'm not certain that it needs to stick around.
Well, time will tell, Julia.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, the people want what they want, and we'll see if it sticks around. Actually, for those who are sticking with us, thank you very much for sticking with Truth, Beer, and Podsequences. As we go through the list of shows, Smooge may come up again. That's a teaser, Julia.
We'll see. Oh, is it? For who?
Yeah, that's a teaser. For the listeners.
We'll see if the smooge happens. Okay, yeah, that doesn't that doesn't sound good either. There is
Bumper
no
stickers.
There
Hashtag Smooge happens.
There is absolutely no good way to talk about smooge, which rolls us perfectly into the next podcast that we're going to talk about. So I know that my glass is almost empty. I think your glass is almost empty.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a real quick break to see if Brian will, in fact, pour us more beers after the nut cracking.
He's happy. He has $100. He doesn't
This
know
is
about
true.
our arrangement.
Yeah, he's standing right over
He's
there.
a
So kind of.
capitalist.
This is true. So yeah, give us a minute to refill our glasses. Well, to have Brian refill our glasses, and we will be back with Shift Beers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an update. Producer Brian was in fact willing to get Marco and I fresh beers.
I told you.
Yeah,
Money
you were
talks.
right. You were right.
Money talks.
So now I owe you another $100 for being right about that.
We'll set up.
I'm
later.
just
It's
gonna
fine.
break even at the end of the night, I guess. But so Marco, well, I guess producer Brian really didn't pour this one for you,
He
but
did.
he opened it for you. Oh,
No, he
did
did.
Oh,
He poured
okay,
it.
okay.
No,
I
he
missed
poured it.
that.
I have a Coors
Coors.
Banquet beer. This
Excellent.
is for Danny Harold out there at Sonder, who is a Coors Banquet guy.
Mm-hmm.
I got a Coors Banquet beer. Wanted something just light. I have had a lot of what's light on the board, and so I went in the cooler because I hadn't gone in the cooler for a while. And I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just do
Pull
a
out
Coors.
a single. That works. That
Coors.
works. So I asked producer Brian to pick something for me because they have a phenomenal tap list and I can never decide. It'll take me 20 minutes to decide what I want to drink. So he picked out for me 16 lots is coconut lavender vanilla coconut milkshake IPA. There are a
Yep.
lot of words in the boards behind me, so I'm not facing it and I didn't write it down.
7.4% ABV from 16 lots out of Mason.
Yeah, is she creamy? That didn't sound right either. Nothing in this episode sounds right.
No. I
No.
mean, but it sticks with sort of the theme
It
of
really-
cream.
And smooge, which
And
could
smooge.
be a cream. The head on the pina colada smooge, because of that coconut cream that they use in it, it almost solidifies. Like I actually posted a picture on, I think it might have been the Twitters. I was literally taking it out with a spoon and eating it with a spoon. It was
Spooning.
delicious. I was spooning the cream in the smooge. Yeah, we may need to put an extra disclaimer on this episode. Not for immature ears.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Urban Meyer
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh!
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no.
Damn. Went there. Wonder how his wife's doing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if he washed his fingers.
Oh, God. Thank you, Marco, for giving me so many things to have to think really, really hard about, do I cut this out or leave it in?
I can tell you my wife has no idea what we're talking about.
Josh probably doesn't either.
A little something happened last weekend in the sports world, everyone.
Yeah. If you know, you know.
Just go on Twitter, and if you really want to know, you can probably find it.
Yeah,
if you don't want to know, just be bliss.
Hell yeah.
All right. What are we doing?
Shift beers. Shift beers. And
I bet all of them know what I'm talking about.
I'm sure that every single one of them knows exactly what you're talking about.
Even though Button Brian's not real and is not on Twitter, I bet he knows.
Oh, yeah. He knows. It wasn't just on the Twitters. It was reshared to the Facebooks, to the Instagrams, to the MySpaces, to the Pinterests, to the... You name the interweb platform.
Yeah.
It was there.
Ah, awesome.
So, Shift Beers, episode 52. Terrible beer names and terrible artwork and just things that, well, I guess not only beers, but drinks that have either names, artwork, something about them is very unappealing, even though the beer itself may, in fact, or the drink, I guess, may, in fact, be very good.
Congratulations to the majority, if not all, of the Cincinnati craft breweries for not being in the show. They did your drinking. They started with your drinking, which they always do.
Yes.
And Button Brian started off because when Button Brian decides to be present, Brian's like, hey, I'm just going to go into it. And he's like, I didn't drink very much. And
then he lists off like 37 minutes worth of what he drank.
Yeah, and I think...
It's impressive. But he still has yet to top you and your drinking from when you were on the show.
Thank you, Julia.
You are still the Gold Crown winner of drinking in my book.
Thank you.
So before I forget, last week... we had so much fun talking about the Shift Beers episode that we completely forgot to mention the Burp Count. I want to make sure we cover that first because, as we know, that is our listeners' favorite part of the Shift Beers recap, and I do not want to disappoint them 2 weeks in a row.
No, I don't want to disappoint them either, and you're right. As far as the Burp Count, we did. Julia, thank you for doing a great job of putting that in the show notes, and I'm sure all of you listen or read the show notes, and thank you.
Because unlike Gnome, I remember to put things in the show notes that I say I'm going to put in the show notes. Oh.
Leading off the Shift Beer segment today is Julia with the Burp Count. Now, to explain the Burp Count, because those of you who are new to the show, first-time episode, here's what happens, okay? So there are opportunities if you wanted to turn Shift Beers into a drinking game. You could have a drink every time there's a SpongeBob rejoin. You could have a drink every time Chris has an Alzheimer moment.
Or kill someone, or threatens to kill someone.
Or goes into what somebody that he murdered was saying as they were dying. Or you could do the one that gets you there the quickest, and that is drink when they burp, so therefore the Burp Count.
Now, every burp, I guess let me back up. The average drink of any liquid is about 2 ounces. So every burp means you consume 2 ounces of beer, whatever your drink of choice is.
Yeah, long drink, whatever.
Exactly. So when I was counting up this episode's burps, I was at 45, and there were still 20 minutes left in the episode. They did a very good job this time around, and I will blame it all on one of the drinks that they went over that they thought had a terrible name, which we'll go into a little later in this segment. They ended up with 54 burps.
I had 55, but I'm sure your count is more accurate.
So, and sometimes it is a little hard to hear if maybe they're clearing their throat and it sounds like a burp, or you might not catch one. So we do our best to be as accurate as possible, but if we were only one off on our counts, that's pretty damn good.
That's what we are here at Truth Beer Pod.
Yeah. So at 2 ounces a drink, or 2 ounces a burp, that's 108 ounces, which means if you were doing the Burp Count drinking game during the episode, you would have had to have drunk 6.75 pints while you were listening to the show.
Yeah.
Good job. Normally they've been hovering around the 5.5 pint mark.
Topped into the 6 pints.
Mm-hmm. They did.
Way to go, Shift
Great
Beers.
job, guys.
Congratulations.
Especially Beth.
Oh,
you rock.
Beth is a champion. Let me just say. I mean, she really is a rock star.
If her and the Newbert Report ever had a burp off, she would win,
How
hands down.
worried are you that Beth is going to have a spin-off podcast and leave the group?
I don't think she'd do it. I think she would have a phenomenal podcast if she decided to do a podcast on her own, mixing her nerdiness, which I love, with her beeriness and her graphic designerness. It'd be a hit, but I don't know. I don't think she would ever actually leave the Shift Beers team.
I'm just a little worried, with, I think of them as a group, right? They're a group, and when you think of music groups, sometimes, some people, come
There's
out
certain
and
members that can't
shine
leave
a
the
little
band.
bit,
Yeah.
and they get enticed to go and do solo work. I kind of get the feeling like Beth is starting to hover, now that they're a year old.
They are.
Hover
They are.
into that little range where there could be a whole little side thing for Beth there.
Although, that actually kind of plays really nicely into a Chris quote that came early on in the episode that Beth could either use to cement her place within Shift Beers, or she could use it as a way to say, hey, this is what you said. I'm taking advantage and I'm stepping out into my own lane. Chris said, in the poker game of life, women are the rake.
Yeah, he did say
Very
that,
profound.
and Beth,
Very, very
Beth
profound.
did question him or push him on that, and
They
go
talked
to the,
about getting a spray bottle for him.
Yep. Go to the show, listen to the show, find out a little bit more about how that worked out for him.
Yeah.
I think that was in the drinking segment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was still pretty early on. It was before they actually got to the meat and potatoes of the episode.
And I envision that show at some point this winter actually having meat and potatoes while recording the show.
But it'll be meat and potatoes that Beth's husband Corey cooks for them all.
Right.
Yes.
Amazing cook.
Yes.
Amazing. If you're not going to have meat and potatoes that I make, you should have meat and potatoes that Corey makes.
Yes. So one of the other things that they had this episode that they didn't have for quite a while, but thanks to Marco and I's constant harassment, it's becoming a little more frequent. We had a Josh's Twisted Tea tip.
Yes, we did.
And I don't want to, if he ever does make a Josh's Twisted Tea tip Twitter, Twisted Tea tip Twitter.
That's 4 T's.
That's a lot of T's. So we had a Josh's Twisted Tea tip. I am not going to ruin it for everyone because I want all of you to listen to this episode of Shift Beers because it was fantastic. They also did another episode of Banger in a Box, which I believe they're recording the video of to put on their Patreon for Patreon subscribers.
Yes, they are. Banger in a Box. Amazing imaging, sounds leading into Banger in a Box. The contestants this week on Banger in a Box. Before we go into that, I want everyone to know what Banger in the Box is. So basically, there are 2 boxes, and inside each box is either a banger, which is a beer that's
Good.
not a Smirnoff Ice, and then there's a Smirnoff Ice.
Don't say that too loud. Producer Brian is still right behind
I know,
us, and he is threatening us.
Yeah, and his
Anyway.
marbles still hurt. So, but he's fine though. He got paid. He doesn't know anything.
He's good.
He doesn't know anything about the other stuff. He's like Mr. Krabs, like showering in money. He's just like, it doesn't matter. I got paid. He just doesn't know how much I paid you.
Nope.
Okay. So Shift Beers, we're doing beers with terrible names or terrible labels.
Yep.
And shout out to all the Cincinnati craft breweries for not making the list.
Well, one Cincinnati craft brewery did make the list.
And was it Cellar Dweller?
It was not Cellar
Well, hell yeah.
There was one Cincinnati brewery that did make the list, and it's actually a beer that I've had, I believe, on the show before. This just shows that even though the name may be misleading, you may see the name of a beer, or I keep saying beer, but any alcoholic beverage, seltzer, a cocktail, whatever, that may sound unappealing. The drink itself could be very good. So again, we want you to listen to the entire episode. You already know from our lead-in that Smooge is on the list because it's a terrible name. It is an accurate name for what that drink is, but it is a terrible, terrible fucking name.
Yeah, it's awful.
It's awful. Urban Artifacts Epicurean Hotel Water.
Yeah, so
So-
you had it on the show.
I did, and this is one of those interesting things about how different people interpret things differently. When I saw hotel water, the very first thing that I thought of was like the I completely lost my train of thought because someone's buying Smooge, and all I can think
right
of are
behind us. Somebody is buying.
They better not-
Smooge.
when I first saw the can of Urban Artifacts Epicurean Hotel Water, my first thought was, oh, the glass jars that they have in the lobby that have cucumber and mint and fruit and all kinds of other things in them. But when the Shift Beers team saw hotel water, their first thought was the god-awful water that comes out of the tap in your hotel room.
And I agree. My first thought was when I heard hotel water, that's exactly what I thought was the water that has the cucumbers floating in it or whatever, and so, some that you might find at a spa sometimes.
Yes,
because
yes.
I frequent spas.
You can tell from your skin. I mean, it is always glowing.
Well, thank you,
I need to get your
Julia.
skincare routine at some point.
I will share. So that's where my mind went. Their mind, I don't know, different place.
Yeah,
And-
which is fine.
Which is fine. And the product itself is, it could have been the banger in the box. It just didn't end up being the banger in the box, but it could have been the banger in the box. Great.
My apologies. My apologies to the listeners. I just smashed my hand into the side of my microphone while Marco was talking, and I have no good way of cutting that out. So my apologies, Marco. Didn't intend for the
okay.
terrible noise interruption there.
That's okay. My wife and my mom don't mind. It's all good.
Okay. I don't think my mom or Josh will mind either, but still.
So, and again, to the point, the beverage is really good. When you know what they're talking about, totally fits the name. It's if you see it around, grab it. I mean, it's good.
So have you ever seen a beverage with a terrible name that just made you cringe when you saw it?
Budweiser.
Fair. I saw one once at a bottle shop down in northern Kentucky. This one was from Natural Light.
Oh, can you say it with a French accent?
Natural Light.
Natural
Natural.
Light.
Fun fact, when I was taking French in high school, in order to help the sound
Yeah.
that you make, our French teacher had us hold Lifesaver candies on our tongue so that we could learn to hold our mouth workings properly for some of those pronunciations.
Pronunciation.
Yeah. Oh,
All right. So you come to Truth Beer and Consequences to hear about Cincinnati craft beer pods, but you just got a little bit of a tip, a lesson when you're trying to learn French.
Correct. Pronunciation is key.
Grab some Lifesavers.
Oui, oui. But yeah, this drink was a hard lemonade from Natural Light called Natty Daddy Hard Lemonade.
Get out of here.
It was awful. I still have
Get outta
I still
here.
have the picture that I actually sent to Jangle about it, saying you guys should do a hard lemonade
Who
episode
the hell
of the
owns
show.
that company? Urban Meyer?
Probably.
Talking about hotel water makes me think of is ranch water, because they had ranch water on the show. Not necessarily in order of the way they drank them, but ranch water, they were talking about how, ranch water, they bring up certain images. To me, ranch water sounds awful. Ranch water. It makes me think of water that is in the trough that horses drink. Yeah, sounds awful. Let's drink with ranch water. It's like, hey, no, forget the fact that it evokes horse water and then horses pooping behind it or in it. Let's have some ranch water.
But apparently it is incredibly good. So
And
I wanted them to mix. There was a spicy ranch water. They had Chris had a variety pack, which figures. I wanted them to mix the spicy ranch water in with the Epicurean hotel water to get that slight spicy pickle-esque, I guess.
Yes, and
flavor, and they didn't do it.
Speaking of ranch and spicy and pickle, they went down the road of what if they were freezing things to put into beverages. So, by the way, there is a company. I don't know if we talked about them, but you can shout out to BC's Montgomery here, BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery. You can come down here. You can get a block spiked ice. So you can get a block of alcoholic frozen ice product in different flavors, which, by the way, they are a local company. Matt Damaris, find the owners, interview the owners. They were talking about freezing alternative products
as into ice cubes.
Yeah. And then infusing them into beverages or food.
Right. So the first example that they had was freezing ranch dressing and dropping it into your Bloody Mary.
Doesn't sound terrible. I mean,
but also,
depending on the ice cube. Like, so there's so when I was growing up, which is when I be 10 years apart, you and I, Julia. When I was growing up, I mean, all you had were the like ice cubes with the hard plastic ice cube trays. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you can get all these neoprene rubber. You can get ice cubes in heart shapes and My Little Pony shapes. You can get them in tiny little spheres, half spheres. You can get them in wedge shapes, all this other stuff. So you can find ice cube neoprene trays and freeze in just about any shape that you want. Send all of your alternative ice cube suggestions to
at Shift Beers. They are at Shift Beers everywhere now. Their Instagram used to be a little bit different, but Josh had Chris threaten the owner of the Instagram at Shift Beers account with murder, and the guy said, the account is yours. So they are at Shift Beers everywhere. So hit him up and let him know your alternative ice cube ideas.
Yeah. Okay. And that is the $499 Patreon level.
Not the ice cubes, but for Chris to murder
someone.
Yeah.
What else you got on Shift Beers, Julia?
I really didn't have anything else.
Let's go ahead and transition then.
All right, let's have Brian give us another insult, and then we'll move on to Sonder Stories. The insults are getting pretty good.
Yeah,
I can't repeat
I went
this
ahead.
one.
I let Brian know that's not what his mom said last night.
Yeah, but you see, as much as I want to share what the insult was, my mom listens to the show, and I can't say that knowing that both of our mothers listen. So
he got
know.
He got the message, though. Julia, what's next? What's on the lineup here?
Chapter 75 of Sonder Stories, where they recorded live at the Oktoberfest and Friends Festival.
It's a great festival. I was present. I volunteered. I got to interact with just a bunch of people, in the Cincinnati craft beer community, but as well the patrons of Sonder. It was a fantastic event. I was pouring beer at their main outside tap area. They have a very big, I think it's like a 53-foot refrigerated trailer that they put taps into.
Oh, nice.
I got to see the Gnarly Gnome. I got to see Josh from Shift Beers. Not your Josh, even though, we were trying to hook up, make that happen. And I saw some other people from Shift Beers. It was Chad from Narrow Path. There was just a wide array of really good people in Cincinnati craft beer community that I got to see. But as far as the show, so the show happened several hours earlier.
Okay.
I was there about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The Sonder Stories episode started recording, I think, around 12 or 12:30.
Okay. And they had a full cast there. They had
huge cast,
like 15 people. They didn't have enough mics for everyone. Justin's dropping his mic all over the place, and it was a good show.
It was a great show.
Great show.
Actually, what I'm going to suggest to our listeners is listening to the Sonder Stories, Oktoberfest, and then listening to, if you've already listened, it's worth a re-listen to the Cincy Brewcast Oktoberfest at Sonder Stories. Because think about this.
Because he just did that earlier that day prior to Sonder Stories, correct?
No, it was right after.
Oh, it was after. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
think about this. So pretend you're Danny and you've had beers.
Yes.
And then you start at 12 or 12:30. You do an episode, and it bleeds right into Cincy Brewcast doing another episode. This is really so for those participants. This is actually real life of how that went. And in Truth Beer Pod, sometimes we take some liberties. This is not a liberty. This is actually how it went for the people in the craft beer community that were on both shows. They lived these essentially 2-3 hours, 3.5 hours of just show and then show. And it was
craziness
fun.
in the best way possible.
It was
sounded
fun.
like so much fun. I learned so much listening to Sonder Stories and their Oktoberfest episode. Just a couple of the real quick things that I learned to touch on is the first is kind of going back to other Sonder Stories episode. Everything is a feeling.
Yeah.
Oktoberfest is a feeling. Craft beer is a feeling. The community is a feeling. Everything is a feeling. Let me see with some of the other kind of quick touches of a few of the things that I learned during the podcast. Only brewers are allowed to have beards. So, Marco, you're going to need to get on that one. There's only one person that was on the show that they said did not have a beard, and I don't know.
Which is why I probably wasn't invited.
Oh.
'Cause I was beardless.
It all makes sense now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Marco.
Josh has a great
but
beard.
But
Mark
again,
has a great
yeah.
beard.
Justin has a great
Justin
beard.
has a great beard.
Yeah.
Danny's got his facial hair going.
Although, if you had
Chad does not have a beard.
so he
Chad from
can't
Narrow
be a
Path
brewer,
does not have a beard.
which is probably that insult about only all brewers need to have beers is probably why he brought a blowtorch and a poker, like a metal like fireplace poker, to the table and burned the thing down halfway through the show.
He was just flexing.
He really was. Speaking of flexing, did you know that grip strength is a superpower? If you had a superpower, what would it be?
I would be a strange superhero.
Why is that?
Because I'm strange. I think I would have the power to approve people for home loans. Yeah, I mean everyone has the right to a great home, and I think I would champion that as the superhero that approves home loans.
All right.
Notice I didn't say they would get them for free. I would just approve them
just
for
say
the
they
loan.
would approve them. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. They still have to go
approve
through all the paperwork. They still have to make the payments
Yeah,
and
they
all
gotta.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
You
you
would
got to
just
do a little
approve
bit
them. Yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
for this. But
All
yeah,
right.
I would approve them for home loans.
Very cool. I like that one. I like that a lot.
You're next, Julia. Superpower.
My superpower would be the ability to absorb knowledge. So if there was something that I wanted to learn about or know how to do or do better, don't you roll your eyes at me.
Oh my God. Okay,
I
so
would
you got to
be
one up
able-
me on this.
Yes.
No, I would be the smartest person.
I would be
ever.
so super smart, and I would know all the things, and I could do
if
all the
you're as
jobs,
smart as me, you would know how to get a
including-
home loan.
I was just gonna say I'd be so smart I could approve your home loans for you. But
Make a
yeah,
great team
yeah,
there,
I
Julia, then.
think I think that we would make a great team with the two of those. Yeah.
Awesome. Way to go.
Cool.
Creeper Pod Superheroes. As far as the
what else?
episode, it was really cool. Danny has a lot of amazing quotes. Josh has a lot of amazing quotes.
Yeah.
Josh from, not your Josh.
No,
Josh
Jangle.
from, Jangle.
We should start saying jangle to ensure that out of like the 5 or 6 listeners that we have, there's no confusion whatsoever about who we're talking about.
We could, although in many ways it's kind of strange and interesting and slightly fun that people get them mixed up.
Yeah.
But either way, Danny and Josh are very quotable. I think there was a quote that Danny said, "All boats rises tides," and then
All boats raises all tides.
All boats
Yes.
raises all tides, and
Very
then he
profound.
said, "I've had beers."
Both very true and very accurate statements.
Yep.
Yeah. Danny should, just like Jangle needs to do a Josh's Twisted Tea Tips Twitter account, Danny needs to have a Twitter account for for his quotes. I mean, beer is a feeling. Friday is a feeling.
He loves to read books.
I've
and
had beers.
I
yeah.
had a coworker at my full-time job come in today. I greeted him as they were walking in. They had a book, a hardback book. It was 3 inches thick. This is not a Truth Beer and Consequences twist. 3-inch thick book. The book title. As he's walking in, he shows me his book. The title is How Not to Die by Doctor and then name. And I said to him, he made a joke, and he's like, I'm reading this because I want to make sure I don't die because of work. And I said, I can tell you one thing's for sure. You could read that book. You can do everything in that book. And a 100% certainty is you are going to die eventually. I don't mean to be morbid.
No,
but
was it a parody book?
I don't know. It could be.
Is he?
I think that'd be great.
Is he immortal? Maybe he's a vampire. Have you ever seen him by a mirror or in daylight?
I have seen him by a mirror. Absolutely.
Garlic.
Because
Throw some garlic at him. See what happens.
Yeah, not a garlic guy.
Okay. So you just see vampire.
Not a garlic guy.
Vampire. No other explanation.
Hey, drop off your silver bullets here at BC's
That's
Biolodge,
werewolves.
Montgomery.
It needs to be wooden stakes or garlic.
Oh yeah, wooden stakes.
Holy water.
Let me
sure
ask you
there's
something. If a priest came by and
Yes.
blessed hotel water, would that work? It would work, right?
It would work. It
Yeah.
would totally work.
Well, let's do
Why
it.
wouldn't it work? Let's do it. We need to find a priest.
Be ashamed
somewhere.
to spray somebody with it though, rather than drink it.
I mean, it was a great episode. You definitely should listen to it.
Here's
It
the deal.
is so much fun.
We're not doing it justice because
We are
it
not.
was so much fun with all the guests, with all the fun. It was just fun.
It was.
This is, again, I'm going to say this for the second week in a row because I wish that there was video to the Cincy Brewcast. I wish there was video to this one because this is how industry people talk when they get around industry people, and all it is really we don't take ourselves too seriously for the most part, and we just want everyone to enjoy what it is we produce and provide. And so, cheers everyone.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll close out kind of my recap of the Sonder Stories podcast episode is the next time you go to Narrow Path or Sonder or any of the breweries that participated in Sonder Stories, ask them if they're a Pico brewery and see if they remember
Pico.
anything about what that whole entire conversation was about.
Yeah, Pico.
Pico.
It's a big conversation.
Pico Chew.
It was a big thread throughout the show. Thank you for bringing
Very.
that back, Julia. Pico Brew.
All right. Well, I guess it's time for another Producer Brian insult and time for us to move on to another podcast.
And welcome back, everybody, to Truth Beer and Consequences, your favorite show that recaps Cincinnati craft beer podcasts. I also like to say that this show is like beer for your ears.
Yes.
Hopefully you feel the same way. Next show that we are going to cover, or pod, either way, is the Craft Parenting Podcast, episode 29, where they talk about good German cooking. And who doesn't like a good German cooking episode?
It is definitely an episode that if you are hungry, don't listen to it because you will become ravenous and turn into a werewolf and eat all of your children.
And then in that case, drop all your silver bullets off to BC's Biolodge, Montgomery, where we will try to make sure to eradicate and exterminate all werewolves.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to the Craft Parenting Podcast for shouting out both Truth Beer and Consequences and Shift Beers.
To all of you who had fun this past weekend at the Donnerschwaben and said hi to Joe and Caroline, I hope you had an amazing experience.
Hope you got to see the Michael Jackson of German dancing.
Exactly. He's
with
the
some of his
Michael
moves.
Jackson of German dancing.
Once again, the impressions are on point.
So this episode certainly follows the typical format of the Craft Parenting Podcast. They get into what they were eating over the week. They get into what activities they were doing. They talk about maybe they went to a store or two or what they did. What were they drinking, Julia?
Caroline was drinking Spaten's Oktoberfest again. They've had that on a couple of the shows,
have?
but it is Oktoberfest season, and it's a good beer.
Do it.
And Joe was drinking Brinktoberfest.
All right.
Yeah. Caroline did admit on the show that she's never seen Dumbo all the way through. That was her things about children's shows that irritate them segment. She's never seen it from beginning to end.
I think I could be wrong as a person who is much younger than you are, Julia. I did see Dumbo in its state, I think, when it came out.
Earlier in this episode, didn't you say you were
much
10 years older?
No, I'm 10 years older. 10 years older, excuse me. You are so much younger than I.
Marco has had beers.
So, me being a lot older than you are, I have seen Dumbo, I believe, in its original format.
And all the way through?
And all the way through. And I also believe that in recent years, there was some cancel culture around some Jumbo stuff, or Dumbo stuff.
Dumbo stuff, yeah.
Yeah, Dumbo stuff. I don't really know what that is. I'm not talking about cancel culture. I'm talking about
Jumbo or Dumbo?
Dumbo. What they were canceling about Dumbo?
Yeah,
I think
for
there
a
was some
different
crows.
podcast. Yeah.
No, there was some crows. There
yeah.
was a problem. Go on the inner Googles and figure that out if you really
Yes.
care. But and I'm not talking about social issues. I'm talking about if you want to know exactly what that was surrounding, Dumbo. But they don't go into that. That's not their thing. That's not what
basically
they're
it was
about.
just that she's never seen it all the way through, even with 2 kids in the household. It was not a very beer-centric episode. It was mostly about the German food. So if you're into cooking, German culture, food, and I mean, who isn't into food, definitely check out the episode. I will say that the beer portion of the podcast that I did want to do kind of a quick shout out and recap on is there was some controversy on the Brinktoberfest can that Joe was drinking.
Yeah, I mean, you want to elaborate on that? Since
I do.
I'm drawing a blank.
He's trying to pour his Coors Banquet into his glass, and he has like a 24-ounce can, a 12-ounce glass,
No, I don't.
and it's just not it's not all going to fit. You need to just take a step back, drink a bit, and then finish pouring the can in.
Okay.
But anyway, so
It's
So
all
they
good,
noticed when they
Julia.
were-
I got it.
Yes, you do, and I will call your wife to pick you up from BC's once
No,
the
you
show
don't
is
need to do
over.
that. We're all fine.
No, we are
Rach,
good.
we're good.
We are very careful to make sure that we are drinking responsibly when we're here.
It just
because
sounds
we want to
funny.
get. It does sound funny, but we want to make sure that we get home safely so that we can come here again next Tuesday to record another show for you guys.
Correct.
But anyway, back to the Craft Parenting Podcast. So Joe was looking up a bit of information about Brinktoberfest, and apparently on the can, the label said that it was 5.7% ABV.
Oh, I remember this.
The Brink's website said it was 6% ABV.
And then the Gnarly Gnomes website had it at.
Untapped
Oh,
had it
Untapped.
at 6.2%.
That's right.
So, I mean, really, those percentages are all close enough that it's not going to make a huge difference between if you chug one can versus like 2 in a row.
Yeah, this isn't
However-
anything like. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no,
Julia.
you're
Please
fine,
go ahead.
you're fine.
This isn't anything like a brewery that is very hyped, putting out cans saying that they're, 8% ABV. And then when somebody goes and checks them or has them tested, they're like 4% or 3.2%. No reputable brewery in the Cincinnati area would do that.
I mean, again, the ABV percentages are slightly off. I mean, Untapped, it's... And as a brewer, maybe you can speak on this a little more than I can, but different brewing, different years, maybe these are cans that they had left over from last year, and when they brewed this year's batch, the ABV was a little different, and their website is more accurate versus, a can that was printed 1, 2, 3 years ago versus Untapped, which maybe whoever handles their Untapped account just fat finger the number. Again,
Could be.
not a huge deal, but it
Could
was
be. I mean,
definitely
if you're-
kind of a, hey, Brink, if you want to let us know, hit us up at Truth Beer Pod anywhere, and just let us know and let the Craft Parenting Podcast know what the ABV is, just for peace of mind, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's not that big a deal.
No,
and we probably
no.
made more of a deal of it on our show than it really is a deal. However,
More for the humor value, but yeah.
For the humor, I mean, we're here for it. Usually, when you register a beer, it's recipe, and if you're going to do it annually and you stick to the recipe, it's all good. If you're going to change the recipe, especially if you're going to distribute, say, out of the state, you want to have an up to date. Registration with up to date information. Maybe you tweak the recipe a little bit from one year to the next to do that. So I mean, there could be a little bit of not misinformation, but
there could be some slight discrepancies from year to year.
Middle,
correct.
New information. It's not that big a deal. And you're absolutely right. Someone could have fat fingered the Untapped or whatever. I mean, because a lot of times, who's registering a beer is not the same person who's putting stuff out on social media.
Correct.
And where are they getting their information? You'd think it'd be all from the same source, but
there are a lot of people right.
This is not a big deal.
It's still a phenomenal beer, regardless of if it's 5% or 6%. That 1% does not make or break a beer. But it was kind of fun to hear Joe check these sites, trying to give us proper information, and he was getting pretty flustered that he couldn't give the listeners the ABV because he was getting multiple values depending on the site that he was going to. So again, not a huge deal. But yeah, if Brink wants to let us know the correct ABV, just hit us up, and we'll be glad to provide that to the masses.
Brink Brewing, listeners of the pod, I'm sure, thank you for everything that you're putting out. Congratulations on all your accolades.
Oh, heck yeah.
For, just doing what you do, putting out
being
fantastic
a badass
stuff.
brewery. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Yep.
So the Craft Parenting Pod really dug into German food, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So many, they cover so many recipes. They cover different peppers, all this other stuff. I mean, it's not really in our wheelhouse, but we want to mention them because they had another episode out, and it was right before the Donnerschwaben Oktoberfest this past weekend. So shout out to Craft Parenting Pod. Hope you had a great Donnerschwaben Oktoberfest, and everyone who got to meet the Michael Jackson of German dancing. I hope you had a great interaction.
And if you took videos of that, at us when you post them on social media.
Please.
Yes,
please do.
We'd love to see it. So, Marco, I think we have one more podcast to cover, which means we need one more beer refill from producer Brian, and we need to be insulted by him one final time before we wrap up the show.
Sounds great. Producer
right.
Brian's wife just walked in to hand him dinner.
He doesn't treat us like that. Are you seeing this?
No. Well,
I mean, this affection
he's not
right
married
here?
to us.
Yeah, but we give him money.
No, you also, I
isn't
also
that...
kicked him in the balls. But
yeah, that's true.
But he got money for it, which, believe me, he loves that. He loves that.
All right, well, let's take a real quick break, get a refill, and we'll be right back.
All right.
You got your beer.
Yeah.
I'm finishing up mine, so I am still good there.
My beer is one of the ones that you had last time, Weihenstephan Festbier.
Excellent.
And it was great. Now, producer Brian's wife did bring him dinner, but it looks like dinner is mac and cheese and cut up hot dogs, little weenies. So that's real love right there. Love, look what you've done to me.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Anyway,
this is a brand new podcast that we have never touched on the show before. Like Marco said in the very beginning of Truth, Beer, and Podsequences, if we find a podcast or even just a single episode of a podcast that fits into our lane talking about Cincinnati craft beer, we'd like to try to shout them out and recap it for you. This is an episode of a podcast produced by a few members of The Inquirer, I believe, called That's So Cincy. And the reason that we're recapping this episode, which originally was released on September 10th of 2021, if I have that written down correctly, is because it stars none other than Jim Cook of Sam Adams and the Boston Beer Company.
Yes. So you have Jason Williams and Sharon Coolidge of The Inquirer They do That's So Cincy. This is my first listen to That's So Cincy.
Same.
It was
Same.
a really interesting podcast. Also, I'm glad to know that this podcast is around. I don't know if I'll be a regular listener, but I know I will regularly look to see what the episode is about. We are covering That's So Cincy because Katie Albers from Grainworks. I had a conversation with Katie here at BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery when I was here last week with my son Vincent. We got to talk about craft beer, and her father had reached out to her and said, hey, you should listen to this episode of That's So Cincy because I think you'd find it interesting. Jim Cook from Boston Beer, Sam Adams, was the guest. So I said, Julia, hey, check this out. And we both said, gotta listen, gotta talk about it.
Absolutely. It is definitely within our lane. It is a Cincinnati podcast. It is about Cincinnati and national beer, but, Cincinnati beer for the most part. Apparently, Jim Cook thinks that he is only interesting when he's surrounded by beer, but I think that's all of us.
Jim Cook is, without a doubt, a great mind as far as the beer and business aspect is concerned. He doesn't start any of his public interviews without making sure everybody knows he has a beer. And I think what he wants to do is make sure that everybody knows that he is not just proud of his beer, but he's a jovial fellow. And as you get in to talk about beer, you find out that he's a very sharp fellow because only sharp fellows go to Harvard.
Yes, and only the best brewmasters and I don't say curators, but crafters of some of the best beer in the nation, which his Boston Lager was called after only, I guess, barely even a year of being out on the market. You have to come from a family of brewers, like his father, his grandfather, long line of master brewers. The recipe for Boston Lager was literally pulled out of a chest in the attic from Jim Cook's father.
And yes, this is all true. And for anybody who listens to this show or anybody who cares to know, you can find many different sources to hear Jim Cook's story. He's 6th generation brewer, and he tells the tale of his father having a bunch of car magazines and pulling out this recipe
Right.
from underneath the car magazines.
Yep.
He also understands and acknowledges that this recipe itself is probably going to be in the Smithsonian one day.
Oh, it should be, yeah.
And the Smithsonian, by the way, if you don't listen to all the podcasts that I do and Julia does, the Smithsonian has a craft beer actual part to it. And people like Ken Grossman, who started Sierra Nevada, they have things there. Jim Cook has things there. I mean, craft beer as a piece of American history is being recognized by the Smithsonian. Yeah. And so he talks about how this recipe for Boston Lager, he says, has never been changed.
Yep.
He also says that it is away in safekeeping, much like a safety deposit box.
Yep.
And has been scanned, so it's digitized, and he fully understands and recognizes that at this point, it is something that is a piece of our craft beer history. And then, Julia, how far away, when you listen to the episode, you're a West Sider. I mean, how far away did Jim Cook grow up from where you are on the West Side?
We were practically next door neighbors, but going by West Side geography, I would say no more than 15, 20 minutes at most.
Yeah,
from
I would
where
think
I live
so.
currently.
What's really cool is, first of all, by opening the Sam Adams Tap Room in Cincinnati, he continues to harken back to his roots
Yes.
He talks about buying the Hudipole Shangling Brewery, that is where Sam Adams is produced right now in downtown Cincinnati. One thing that he didn't mention in this interview that I know from listening to all the podcasts is that he actually walked his father through that brewery, which his father brewed at.
Oh, that's too cool.
And he was able to show his father and help his father reminisce and say, Father, I own this now.
Mm-hmm.
And
didn't his father tell him, don't go into beer, you'll
He
never
did.
make any money?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had to explain to his father what his vision was
Mm-hmm.
and what how he was going to be different. Jim Cook's story and his come up is a tale of certainly somebody who, as Matt Damaris would say, is a hustler, baby.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
this guy
Absolutely.
was schlepping beer out of his car, trying to build his brand,
Mm-hmm.
and he did, and he built his brand, and he made a great product, and it stood out amongst the industry.
I did find my note on that, that Sam Adams Boston Lager was picked as one of the best beers in America, only 6 weeks of it being out in the market, which
Delicious
is absolutely
beer.
ridiculous.
Delicious
I love
beer
it.
all the way until today.
Yep.
It's any craft beer drinker's go-to beer if you're sitting at, if you're sitting in an airport or if you're sitting somewhere and you're like, darn, I mean, I'll just have the Boston Lager.
Wherever-
you
right.
go to a chain restaurant and it's like, what am I drinking? What can I have to drink? What can I have? Boston Lager. I'll have that. It's an amazing
It's
beer.
like a taste of home no matter where you are.
For sure. And Jim Cook put the tap room in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
If you have not been to the tap room in Cincinnati, please go. He's very proud of the tap room. He also talks about the fact that there's not going to be too many Sam Adams tap rooms around the country. This is not a model.
He
that
wants
he-
to respect the places that he holds near and dear to his heart. From what I got out of the interview, he has a tap room out in Boston, but then his only other tap room is here in Cincinnati. So
Yep.
he's staying true to his roots, where he came from, and he's not going to put in a whole bunch of tap rooms across the country just because.
No, and they're not going to be brew pubs either.
No.
He makes very clear that he says, "Look, we make beer, and that's what we're good at. I don't run restaurants. So
Yes.
although there is some fare to be had if you're looking to munch at the Cincinnati Sam Adams Tap Room, they are not a restaurant. And when you walk in, it's pretty clear they're not a restaurant.
Yeah.
But it's also pretty clear this is a pretty damn cool place. It's a pretty high-end place. Julia,
It
have
is,
you
yeah.
been there?
I have not been there yet. Well, that's not entirely true. I've been to the outside of it during COVID to pick up some crowlers to go.
Okay.
I have yet to visit to go inside, but Gnarly Gnome released a Cincy Brewcast episode. This was quite a while ago, right after they opened, describing the interior of it as part of the episode, and I can't wait to go and sit down at one of those ornate, elaborate tables and enjoy a beer.
It is top notch.
Yep.
Without a doubt, Julia.
Yeah.
And I have, I've told you that I have been,
Yes.
and my son has been.
Yes, you have.
And-
I do, but I do want to make sure that I quote them correctly before you tell us about your visit to the tap room.
Please do.
Because I think that it's a great episode. It is I feel like every interview that I hear with Jim Cook, even though the story is similar, it's always told in a very fresh way, to where I could listen to him tell his story about the Boston Beer Company and Sam Adams over and over, and you're never going to hear it exactly the same way. But he did say something that I absolutely loved, and that I think you can appreciate as well. He said that when they were starting off, before they became a national powerhouse, really, he said that they had a mindset of, we're okay if things don't get huge. We're okay if things stay small. And the first thing that popped into my head when I listened to that was, that's what she said.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you, Julia. I
not a
appreciate
problem.
that
My
affirmation.
insights are as deep as a well.
Not just insight, but affirmation. Thank you. But you're right, and look what it became. I mean,
Yeah.
and so could be Truth Beer and Consequences. You never know. I will say that it was exciting to listen to the show, even though I've heard Jim Cook's story several times, because he drops a nugget. And
It is a nugget that the Shift Beers folks will be very, very happy about.
so he drops a nugget. He tells you about something that's coming up that's next from the Sam Adams portfolio of brands. And then the Gnarly Gnome on the Weekly Pint covered what that next thing is going to be. And then he has an opinion about it. However, it was really cool that 2 weeks ago, this nugget dropped for Cincinnati listeners. I'm not going to spoil it.
No, you got to listen to the episode if
want
that's
you
so
to listen to
Cincinnati
the
to find out.
episode.
Yeah.
But Julia, let me tell you about the Sam Adams Tap Room, and then we can transition to, telling our listeners thank you and catch you next week.
Well, you said that you had a story about when you and Vincent went to the Sam Adams Tap Room here in Cincinnati. Did you want to tell that, or did you want someone else to give that recap of the day for you?
Well, I think we have a perfect person to recap that for us, and I'm not going to get in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, though, please go to the Sam Adams Tap Room. Please support Sam Adams. They are local. Please support
They
all
are
of-
Cincinnati beer.
Please support all of Sam Adams' entities, which include many like Twisted Tea, Angry Orchard, Truly Hard Seltzer, the Sam Adams vast catalog of beers, and just go down there and support the tap room. It's an amazing place. It's top notch as far as the interior space, and the outdoor space is extremely nice. It's catty-cornered to Findlay Market, and from what I'm told, it's not far from the new soccer stadium.
Correct. It is 2 blocks at most from I still want to say Weston Stadium, but
QTL.
the Tickle Stadium,
Yep,
as us soccer fans like to say.
that's nice. Tickle.
A tickle.
And I am going to say this was great, Julia. Thank you for
Yeah,
joining me.
absolutely.
We're going to cheers, and I want our esteemed guest to recap Vincent and I's travel and experience to the Sam Adams Tap Room.
We'll see you guys next week.
Hello. This is Morgan Freeman. I want to give you an account of Marco and his son. Marco and his son, 2 years ago, went to Sam Adams Tap Room, Cincinnati, where Marco paid for an ounce of Utopias. His son was there, enjoyed the day, and Marco was pleased. And as they took the ride home, Marco turned to his son and asked, "Vincent, did you enjoy the day?" And he said, "It was the best day ever." So Sam Adams and Boston Beer, as you're about to release Utopias, please consider helping Marco recreate this beautiful moment with his son. And send 2 bottles of Utopias to Julia and Marco at Truth Beer and Consequences. Catch us on all of your social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can catch us on Truth Beer and Consequences at gmail.com. And thank